A new girl named Ayla Ward works silently in the base armory, usually overlooked and assumed to be just a cleaning technician. She keeps to herself, avoids crowds, and spends most of her time maintaining heavy weapons like the Barrett 50 cal. Soldiers walk past her without noticing anything special, even making quiet jokes about her being too soft for combat. One morning, a group of Marines find her carefully disassembling a .50 cal with expert precision, but they still think she's just following instructions. They have no idea she's doing it from memory. Her eyes stay calm, focused, and strangely familiar to old war veterans, but no one can place Y. During a routine inspection. A senior armorer struggles to reassemble a jammed firing mechanism. Ayla slips beside him and fixes it in seconds, using a technique only elite long-range units are taught. The room goes silent. Whispers spread. How does she know that? Later, a lieutenant accidentally sees her adjusting wind charts and ballistic calculations on her notebook, numbers only pro snipers would understand. The lieutenant suspects something is off and reports it to the captain. That night, Ayla quietly packs her things, knowing attention is rising. She wanted anonymity, but the past is catching up. Two curious soldiers hack into the restricted personnel archive. They find a sealed file, Ward, a Ghost Eye program. They open it and freeze. Classified missions. 0 visibility ops. Her confirmed longest shot, 4,012 meters, taken during a mountain conflict 2 years ago. The kill saved an entire battalion from ambush. Yet she vanished from active duty immediately after, with the file stamped "Retired Psychological Trauma." The soldiers realize the quiet girl they've been ignoring is a legend. The next morning, the entire base looks at her differently, some with fear, others with respect. When an enemy infiltration team breaches the outer perimeter at dawn, the base sniper is wounded. With no one left to take the overwatch position, panic spreads. Heavy fog disables drones. Satellites are down. The captain calls for any qualified long-range shooter. Nobody steps forward. Then Ayla, still holding a cleaning rag and smelling of gun oil, simply says, "I can take the shot." Soldiers stare in disbelief as she picks up the .50 cal she had been cleaning. She moves with quiet confidence, climbing to the highest platform. The base holds its breath. The moment she settles behind the scope, her entire aura changes. Through fog and chaos, Ayla identifies the enemy commander moving in the shadows far beyond normal visibility range. She calculates elevation, humidity, wind, and motion by instinct alone. One perfect breath. One smooth trigger pull. The .50 cal roars. A full 5 seconds of silence follow. Then the enemy group collapses. Soldiers check the distance, 3.8 kilometers, nearly as long as her old record. When she walks back down, the entire base stands waiting. For the first time, the Marines salute her. The captain simply says, "Welcome back, Ghost Eye." Ayla nods quietly. Knowing she can never hide who she truly is again, Ayla Ward arrived on the base without any ceremony. Carrying a small duffel bag and wearing the simple uniform of an armory technician. Nothing about her presence demanded attention. She moved quietly, spoke only when needed, and kept her head slightly lowered as if she wanted the world to pass around her without noticing. Inside the massive hangar, where engines roared and soldiers shouted orders, she looked like the calmest, smallest wave in an angry ocean. Most of the soldiers barely glanced in her direction, a few nodded politely. But none suspected anything extraordinary about the new girl wiping dust off rifles and polishing bolts on the workbench. Every morning, Ayla walked into the armory before sunrise. The lights still dim and cold, she tied her hair, slipped on her gloves, and began her routine with the heavy Barrett .50 cal resting on the table like an old friend returning home. She cleaned it with a focus that didn't match her supposed rank. Her fingers memorized every curve, screw, and shadow of the weapon. She didn't need manuals, she didn't need guidance. It was like the rifle breathed with her. Outside, soldiers passed by cracking jokes, calling her the quiet cleaner, assuming she was just another recruit given a soft job because she couldn't handle real action. They never paid attention to the way she checked wind direction, even inside the hangar, or the way she aligned tools with precision sharp enough to make an instructor pause. Now and then, older veterans glanced at her a moment too long. Something about the way Isla stood, shoulders firm but relaxed, eyes steady yet distant, reminded them of someone. Maybe a ghost from a battlefield they thought they left behind, but they dismissed the thought. No one expected a legend to be wearing a plain tech uniform one afternoon, as she was quietly disassembling the massive .50 cal. A group of Marines stood nearby waiting for a briefing. They watched her work for a moment, entertained more than impressed. But as minutes passed, their mocking grins faded. The way she moved wasn't basic training. It wasn't hobby-level knowledge. It was mastery, silent, controlled, and lived through experience. Still, none of them spoke to her, and Ayla kept her focus low, trying to blend into the shadows, but even she felt it. The base was beginning to watch her, not because she asked for attention, but because her skill refused to stay hidden much longer. Her quiet wouldn't protect her forever, and the past she escaped was slowly following her into the light. The shift was supposed to be ordinary, nothing more than routine maintenance and inspection. The kind of day Ayla counted on to stay invisible, but fate had a different idea. Near midday, the senior armorer, Master Sergeant Doyle, struggled with a stubborn firing mechanism on one of the heavier rifles. He cursed under his breath, tools clattering across the table. The younger soldiers exchanged nervous looks, none brave enough to offer help. Doyle was known for his temper. Ayla had been working at the next bench, quietly polishing a bolt carrier, pretending not to notice the growing frustration only a few feet away. She kept telling herself to stay out of it, to remain unnoticed, to avoid anything that would remind people who she used to be. But when the sergeant applied force in the wrong direction and risked damaging the entire assembly, her instincts overpowered her desire to hide. She stepped forward, her voice soft but firm as she said, "You're reversing the tension." Doyle froze, surprised that the quiet technician even spoke. Before he could respond, Ayla gently reached for the weapon, her fingers moving with the confidence of someone who had mastered this process 1,000 times before. In less than 5 seconds, she freed the jam using a technique none of the armory staff recognized. It wasn't written in manuals, it wasn't taught in basic armorer courses. It was a field expedient correction known only to elite long-range units. Doyle stared at her hands, then at her face, trying to understand how a low-ranking tech performed a maneuver even he didn't fully know. The room fell unnervingly silent. One Marine whispered, "Where did she learn that?" Another murmured. That wasn't normal. Later that evening, as Ayla packed up her tools, Lieutenant Harris walked past and caught a glimpse of her notebook lying open on the table. It wasn't filled with simple sketches or cleaning instructions. Instead, it was covered in ballistic equations, wind drift charts, humidity corrections, spin drift calculations, and advanced long-range shooting data that only expert snipers studied. Harris's breath caught. He recognized the equations instantly. They were identical to the ones used in high-altitude, extreme-distance operations. Ayla felt his eyes on her and closed the notebook quickly. But the damage was done. Whispers began spreading again. The kind that moved faster than truth. The kind that reached the captain before nightfall. Ayla sensed the shift in the air, the way people watched her differently. She felt the thin wall she had built around her past beginning to crack. And she knew it wouldn't hold for much longer. Rumors spread across the base faster than any official memo could. Soldiers whispered in hallways, exchanged glances in the mess hall, and watched Ayla a little too closely when she passed by, She kept pretending she didn't notice. But inside she felt the familiar tightening in her chest. The same tightening she had felt the day she walked away from her old life, hoping anonymity would protect her. But whispers have sharp teeth, and curiosity has no discipline, especially among bored young soldiers. Two of them, Privates Collins and Ramirez, sat in the communications room late that night, arguing quietly about Ayla's unusual skills. One claimed she must have been Special Forces. The other insisted she was just naturally talented. Confusion irritated them. And irritation led to a bad decision. They pulled up the restricted personnel database, the one they weren't allowed to access without a direct order. But Collins had found a small loophole weeks earlier and never told anyone, with one risky click after another. They searched her name. The screen flickered before revealing a sealed file stamped with a red warning label. Ward, Access Level Omega. Their breath stopped, but curiosity pushed them further. They cracked the encryption, and the moment the file opened, their faces drained of color. Inside were mission reports from operations they had only heard in legends, night raids with zero visibility, mountain conflicts fought above the clouds, impossible distances recorded as confirmed kills. Then they saw it. The line that made Collins' voice shake. Longest confirmed sniper engagement, 4,012 meters. A shot that saved an entire battalion from an ambush that could have wiped out hundreds. But they also saw something else, something even more haunting. A psychological evaluation detailing the aftermath. Ayla had disappeared from active service immediately after the record-breaking shot, vanishing into a mandatory retirement program known as the Ghost Eye Transition, a program reserved for snipers pushed to the mental edge. Snipers who saw too much, who carried the weight of lives they saved and lives they ended. Collins closed the file with shaking hands. Ramirez whispered, "She's a ghost, man. A real one." They both knew they had crossed a line, but it was too late to take back what they learned. By morning, the news had spread across the base like wildfire. Soldiers stared at Ayla with a mix of respect, fear, and awe when she walked into the hangar. The air felt heavier. Eyes followed her even though she kept her head low. The truth she had buried was no longer just hers. It had surfaced, and the base would never see her as the quiet cleaner again, only as Ghost Eye, the sniper who once reshaped a battlefield with a single breath and a single shot. Before sunrise, the base was wrapped in a strange, heavy stillness, the kind that soldiers recognized as a warning even before alarm sounded. Ayla was in the armory early as always, wiping down the same .50 cal she had cleaned a dozen times before. She tried to focus on the steady rhythm of her work, hoping it would drown out the whispers that had followed her since the rumors spread. But the silence broke when the first distant explosion shook the hangar walls. Vibrations rattled tools and sent a cold shiver through every soldier on duty. Within seconds, the emergency sirens wailed. Red lights pulsed, and soldiers sprinted across the base grabbing gear and rifles. Ayla stepped outside the armory just as a medic team rushed past, carrying the base's only designated sniper, his uniform soaked with blood, his leg torn by shrapnel. He reached out and grabbed the captain's sleeve, struggling to speak. "You need someone on overwatch." Now, the captain's face tightened, because with their sniper down and drones blinded by a thick morning fog, the base had no eyes, no protection, no long-range support. Enemies moved in the distance, hidden shapes slipping through the mist, too far for regular infantry to handle, too close to ignore. Radio chatter filled the air with panic. "We have no one qualified for extreme range." One officer shouted, "Who's going to take the tower?" Another yelled. Ayla stood near the armory doorway, heart pounding as she watched chaos unfold. This was exactly the world she had left behind, the world she had promised herself she would never return to. But when she saw the fear in the soldiers' eyes, when she heard the strain in the captain's voice, something inside her shifted. The instinct she had buried so deeply rose like an old ghost breathing again. She stepped forward, quietly at first, then louder. "I can take the shot." the words cut through the panic like a blade. Every soldier turned toward her, confusion and disbelief painted across their faces. She was still wearing her simple tech uniform, still holding a cleaning rag in one hand, yet her voice carried a certainty stronger than the alarms blaring overhead. The captain studied her, searching her eyes, trying to decide whether this was desperation or truth. Ayla held his gaze without flinching. "Give me the .50 cal," she said calmly, "and show me the highest platform." In that moment, the base felt something shift. The quiet girl they had overlooked was no longer hiding, no longer blending into the background. She was stepping into the role she once fled, and every soldier around her sensed it. The legend known as Ghost Eye was waking up again, ready or not. The battlefield was calling her back. Ayla climbed the metal staircase of the observation tower with the .50 cal cradled in her arms, each step echoing like a memory she wished she could forget. Fog wrapped the base in a gray shroud, muting colors and turning every shape into a ghost. Soldiers watched her from below, stunned into silence. None of them dared to shout encouragement or offer advice. They sensed it instinctively. She didn't need either. She moved with the calm, steady rhythm of someone who had crossed the line between life and death long before sunrise. At the top of the platform, Ayla lay flat, spreading out the bipod with one practiced motion. She pressed her cheek against the stock, and it felt like coming home and breaking apart at the same time. The wind was subtle but shifting, humidity thick enough to distort visions. The kind of environment even seasoned snipers cursed under their breath. But Ayla didn't curse. She simply breathed, slow and controlled, her heartbeat syncing with the pulse of the earth beneath her. Through the misty scope, she saw blurry silhouettes advancing with quiet discipline. The enemy commander moved between them, protected by his squad, unaware that a pair of eyes was already locked onto him from nearly 4 kilometers away. The distance made the shot nearly impossible. The fog made it worse, but Ayla's mind didn't dwell on difficulty. Instead, it walked through calculations the way an artist walks through colors. She adjusted elevation by instinct, accounted for the temperature and the slight uphill angle. Every correction whispered to her like an old friend calling her by name. Down below, soldiers held their breath as if the entire base had frozen in place. Even the captain stood unmoving, visor fogged, hands clenched behind his back. He wasn't just nervous. He was witnessing someone step back into a destiny she had tried so hard to outrun. Then Ayla exhaled, that single breath stretched into eternity. Her finger tightened the trigger with a softness that didn't match the power of the weapon. The .50 cal thundered through the fog, a shockwave rolling across metal railings and rattling windows like a storm. The bullet vanished into the mist, leaving only silence behind it. 5 seconds passed, long enough for doubt to slip into the hearts of everyone watching. But on the 6th second, enemy figures collapsed like shadows losing their form. The commander dropped first. Struck cleanly, the rest scattered in panic, their formation broken, their advance shattered by a single breath and a single shot. When Ayla descended the tower, she didn't smile, didn't boast, didn't even look proud. She simply walked with the same quiet step she always had. But this time the base wasn't quiet. Every soldier stood waiting for her at the bottom. Back straight, eyes full of something deeper than respect. The captain stepped forward, his voice low but steady as he said, "Welcome back." Ghost Eye. Ayla paused, a flicker of emotion breaking through her calm mask. She didn't need medals. She didn't need applause. All she needed was the knowledge that, for one more day, she had protected people who had once overlooked her, and whether she wanted the title or not. The legend of Ghost Eye had returned, not as a weapon, but as a guardian who walked silently among them.